you are very famous for this quote. A client's best day of the week should be the day they spend with their agency.
It should be fun, there should be energy, and there should be the result to go with it. I think the trust part comes from both sides, is what happens when you perhaps hit one of those bumps.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Have You Heard podcast. This is very exciting today. Joined by Andy. Welcome.
Thanks, Adam.
How are you?
Excellent.
First time on the sofa.
Looking forward to being your guest.
Good. We are going to be talking a little bit around agency value, trust, how you build it, how you maintain it. I have a quote, or you are very famous for this quote, I suppose, around this building of something along the lines of a client's best day of the week should be the day they spend with their agency, which I think kind of encompasses the idea of what we're going to talk about today and the excitement an agency should bring. But with that, obviously, you're not going to feel that without trust, value add on both sides of the coin. Is there history in that quote or feeling from your experience, or why those words tumbled from your mouth?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure other people have come up with something similar before. It part of it is the sort of like the around the growth. Your business is growing. You've engaged with an agency to support you on it. So yeah, it should be fun. There should be energy, and there should be the results to go with it, so that the agency's pleased with what they've produced, and the clients actually pleased with seeing it in ultimately their growth, or whatever the objective is. It's not always necessarily about growth, but whatever the conversion that you've signed up to achieve is being hit. I think in terms of the trust part, I think that the trust very often comes. There can be some bumps, and those bumps could be supply chain bumps from a client side, or there can be sometimes things going on that impact the plans that you'd hope to achieve as an agency or to deliver. And I think the trust part comes from both sides, is what happens when you perhaps hit one of those bumps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like any relationship, really, isn't it? That the ebbs and flows of building a relationship to start off with, what happens when it goes wrong, how it's dealt with, breaking of trust, not sort of seeing it as just that's the end of the road. And I think in the world of the business that we work in, it is very much, it's not always going to go smoothly. There's going to be moments like that. So the trust is sometimes more important than almost the value you add, in a way, because the trust is where you can have a frank and open conversation, and you can be honest about different things on both sides, and you create almost that understanding between, where the faults may have lain, but ultimately then how you're going to get out of it. And I suppose that's where the expertise and the value comes in afterwards. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you can take a set of numbers, and you can go to a weekly, monthly, whatever the time period is, meeting, and you can keep changing. You can keep changing the way you present the numbers so that they hit something. But that consistency, everyone gets used to it. And when there is something that isn't quite right, is it a why that's a macro factor, and there's nothing you can do about it, but you need to change. Perhaps need to change direction, or is it something that is absolutely within the control of you and the client that you're working with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's such an interesting idea around sort of value and trust building. I don't know if it's been done on purpose, but obviously as potentially different generations for a young business that's working in social, that we are, if you don't mind me saying. But I do obviously often joke around with the business at 35 being in social and digital agencies for 12, 15 years. I do feel like an old timer, because the evolution of this industry is incredible. Like, it happens so quickly. What agencies had as a value or an ownership of value 10, 15 years ago in, content creation or understanding of platforms is massively shared now with the clients we have, which I think is a really exciting thing, because they obviously have brand managers or just managers or senior clients, whatever their titles are, that we're working with day to day, who actually understand the platforms, they understand how to create content, they understand, how paid works, for example, in more detail than what it was like 10 years ago, where we were very much, that it all felt quite dark arts and under lock and key, and agencies had ownership and control of all of that stuff. Now I think it's more exciting. Personally, I think it's more exciting when clients do understand what is going on, because it pushes you, it challenges you, but you can work more collaboratively to obviously that helps massively with that trust point. But I think the first part of the side of the coin, or what we were talking about earlier in terms of that value add of agency, I know we've spoken about it before in terms of the shift in mentality from a brand side, or certainly when we're working with clients, if they do fill out and build teams a little bit more with slightly more expertise, but they are in some aspects generalist, because it's really hard, certainly when you see it from like a financial perspective, to have all of the skill sets and experience that we might have in an agency. Do you think there's, and I suppose, do you think, but also how much value do you think that still holds in and working with an agency compared to trying to bring potentially everything in-house, or and as much of, obviously it's a balancing act as well as to what you can offer in-house with agency, and where agencies can add that value and sort of top up on knowledge and expertise, but feel like an extension of your in-house team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest factor there is actually size. I mean, you've got some brands that will have an awesome inside team that would cover off probably as much as we do at TSS, and you're going to have businesses now that sort of openly build agencies within a business, and have their sort of employees, their team, actually formulated into a bespoke agency for that brand. And then I guess as you come down in both size, complexity, you may have the sort of, I don't know, need for an analyst, a videographer. You need it as part of your mix, but you don't need that individual. You don't need that individual 5 days a week. You actually need them for an individual project, and I suppose therefore you then perhaps as an agency, you're competing at one level with how much goes in house, and at the other level with perhaps freelancers who again, some awesome freelance videographers, but if you as a business, as a brand, if you're actually thinking, well, I've actually got time to manage this group of freelancers, that's great. However, where an agency can come in is actually, finding out, understanding the brand, doing key business as usual work, but then also when there is this need for some added creativity, some added strategy, you don't have to start from scratch and go and explain it to somebody. The business that the agency already knows, and therefore the agency can add value in that way by flexing to support what your what your individual objective is.
I also think there's so much to be said for the especially a company now, like if you look at TSS, it was 60 odd people, the amount of skill set and thinking that's even from, like, if I'm not a car, I would just look at it from an internal perspective of having access to a paid team of 30 people or whatever it is, and being able to go over and be like, hey, I've got this basis, but what I need is just that little bit of extra or a little bit of support. And the same way from clients, if it take away of when they ask us questions sometimes, which again, probably feeds into that trust bit where they trust us to ask the questions, but predominantly they see the value in, we've got an idea and an understanding of what we want to do, but actually what we kind of need your help with is to almost sense check and tick the box on this, because you do have experts or access to 10, 15 people who have kind of done this time and time again. And I think there's so much value in that as well, of just, like you say, whether it is an individual skill set you need to deliver a project, or also that longer term piece, which is actually we're just doing this stuff day in, day out. And I think you used the example the other day, which I'll steal like it's my own, but, you know, talking about the paid side of things, you know, we are operating and the volumes of spend for clients going through, like from a paid perspective for us, on a yearly basis is huge, even on a monthly basis. And what that means is we have then access through, you know, Metas or TikTok or whoever it is to get additional support, but also opportunity to work with them to do test and learn campaigns. We only get that because of the volume across all of our clients that we're spending. Whereas if you're just an individual, yes, you might have the expertise and you're focused on your product or brand or campaign, but you won't necessarily maybe be spending the amount to get those expertise or that learning or that additional bit of insight where agencies will just continuously have access to.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's going to be some clients that still applies to. There's going to be agencies that are bigger than us, smaller than us, and there's going to be, you know, guys that work on their own and offer paid as an experience. But it's not just that, Adam. I think it's the fact that the different clients and the different sectors that we work in, there's something that someone can pick up over here. You know, working in cosmetics that suddenly becomes a directly transferable learning to actually work in hospitality over here. Which obviously, if you're in a single brand, it's difficult to to sort of like keep up with that part. So I think that's a really important bit. I think learning from other sectors. I think, you know. Brands do it, and you know, agencies. We must continue to continue to do that and make sure everyone knows what everyone's up to, what went good, not only what went good, what went bad. What didn't go so good, so that you don't make the same mistake. And it's also, I mean, that applies very much. It's easy to get stuck on paid because that can be, you know, to a degree, can be quite scientific and analytical. But I was listening to one of the sessions that the organic team had the other lunchtime, and it was the same thing there. It was like, we've seen this here, we've seen this trend going on here, and the other teams can actually pick up on that. So and then it becomes collaboration between the different deliverables. I mean, we've got Strat, we've got client services, we've got influencer, we've got organic, we've got paid, we've got content, we've got creative. There's a lot of different channels there, and you know, bringing it all together and making sure there's learnings across the business is important, and another great way of demonstrating you know, value to the clients.
Yes, massively. I couldn't agree more. I think also off the back of that, of just, you know, this towards last week, give or take, when this goes out, and a few weeks ago, when we had our agency strategy day and planning, and I think what was really interesting, obviously all departments sharing those learnings and bits and pieces from there, but actually from a value perspective, but also building trust, there's a real focus, certainly from a business over the next, obviously it's always part of what we're doing anyway, you know, building, learning, making sure that we are understanding as much about our industry, but also our clients as much as possible, but that future proofing and looking at a business of areas we can optimize and improve. And I think, you know, that focus for the next 12 months of really looking at how we can build trust in different ways in a changing landscape, let's call it, in terms of, you know, a more virtual, more, you know, online, more digital world, of still tapping into client experience and product and what the values of that product actually is, that they're offering, and the experience and all of that kind of stuff as well, which will ultimately help build our understanding and our knowledge and our output across the board as well, with, like you say, all that scientific stuff that might happen in paid, actually understanding the brands more, getting under the skin of what they're doing, I think adds to that value as well, and really allows us to be a proper extension of a client.
Yeah, I think that there's there's some businesses whereby if it is product led, it's very much something that can be, products can come in. We can pick the right influencer that actually has a following that already sort of fits with that brand and the same values, etc. But you then have sectors where, as a performance agency and sort of like that providing creative and planning, etc., it's quite hard to actually give in my opinion, absolute optimum service if you're not actually sort of like going and seeing them, seeing their restaurant, seeing their bar, seeing their hotel actually in situ, because somebody can tell you how great it is. You can read a TripAdvisor to say how great it was, but for you to then how you interpret that without actually seeing it. So yeah, I mean, from the perspective of TSS with a sort of like a planning perspective, though we've got a budget for the teams to actually sort of like, deliberately spend time out of the office actually with at client venues, at client events, so that we actually get that we get that feel. And it's also about trying to find out, when you see something that's going on, whether it be in the news or whatever, and you think to yourself, actually, that's really relevant to the client I'm working on. So when you have the next meeting with them, it's sort of like have a bit of sort of like empathy with them. It might be something that's really good. It might be something that's actually impacted what they're doing.
And I think all of those things as well, when experiencing and going out and seeing it, being in a restaurant or a venue or whatever it is, they give you so much insight and added value into the actual product and brand that you're talking about. Because when I always think it's great to sit, when we onboard a new client, or just throughout the years when we're working with clients, we'll do immersion sessions. They'll send us updated research or informational, but it's just black and white on a piece of paper or a slide or whatever it is, it's opinion based, or it's a Q&A and they've asked all of their guests or customers or whatever to fill this in. But until you actually go there, it's quite hard to understand why somebody might enjoy that part of the experience. It's very much, we work with fashion brands, and some of them say to us, all of our customers say that they love the store. Well, that's great, but unless I've actually walked into a store, it's really hard for me to understand what they do love about it, or I try and understand that. And I think the act of then, like you say, going and experiencing doing it, from my perspective as well, still or is very much part of, back to the first point of this, of building that trust, because it demonstrates a real understanding for a brand or product outside of just a piece of paper that you've given me with data and insight onto it, because you're experiencing it, you're feeling it. You don't have to do that all the time, but across the board, when you can do that and when you have the opportunity to go and do that, I think then you can build that relationship more with the clients and the people we're working with the brand. The value then is going to come through, well, I understand this more, so creatively I can build on this, or I can plan in this way, I can execute something in this way. To your point, I saw that over here, that's become really relevant now for what I'm doing, because I get the connection.
Yeah, I mean, particularly around things, I guess, like community management is a really good example, where there are still things, whichever channels you're in, that you get to sign off. You think of an old style ad, you'd produce it, you'd get it proof once for artwork, you get it proof another time for a chromalin or something, and then and then it would go in and everyone had seen it. And to a degree, within social, there's still things that do get checked, but community management is something that a client trusts you to actually answer, get on with, and so yes, it's important to. It's important to know. I guess it's also important there to know when to actually also say, I think this is a level that really need to pass that on, and that's how you get to know that your knowledge of your relationship with the client's really important. And the team as well, having sort of like trust from the senior leadership team and the board in terms of their remit. What can they do? How far can they push things? that kind of the trust thing goes all the way.
Yes,
Goes all the way through.
Massively important. And I think, you know, a lot of what we do, obviously, it's that, and I think agencies across the board really is that we focus very much or very heavily on the result. I mean, you only have to look at, you know, awards that, you know, we obviously have here and all of this kind of stuff. They're very executional often, and they're all great to win. But actually, under the surface, the reason you're picking up awards and winning these things is because of that value and that trust that you're able to build, and that foundation.
Yeah, I always think client retention is quite a good
award
exactly. metric.
Yes, yeah. It'd be good if there was an award for that, most retained clients. I think you're so right, because it's retention, it's nurturing, it's growing clients, it's all these things that we
retaining them for the retention for the right reasons as well, not because it's easy or comfortable, because both sides are getting, from an agency, you're producing great work for great people, and from client, you're actually seeing the results you want, and building of the brand. Yeah,
massively. But that feels like a good place to wrap up. Thank you very much for joining us, your first podcast experience.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, all those good things, and there'll be more podcasts coming very soon.